Most people are professional dream killers. They have turned laughter into a weapon and doubt into their daily bread. They wake up every morning looking for visions to mock, ideas to destroy, and potential to bury. These people aren't just harmless skeptics. They are the graveyards where greatness goes to die. They celebrate mediocrity because excellence threatens their comfortable cage of limitations. They laugh at your dreams because your success would expose their surrender. They mock your vision because your breakthrough would reveal their breakdown. Right now, someone is laughing at the very idea that will make them rich tomorrow. The question isn't whether they'll laugh at you, it's whether you let their laughter become your obituary. December 17th, 1903. The cold morning air cut through Kitty Hawk, North Carolina like a blade. Two brothers stood on the windswept beach, their strange contraption of wood, fabric, and metal looking more like a child's oversized toy than anything that belonged in the sky. The few locals who had gathered weren't there to witness history. They were there for entertainment. Orville Wright climbed into the pilot's position while his brother Wilbur ran alongside their flying machine. The engine sputtered to life, the propellers began to turn, and for 12 seconds, their aircraft lifted off the ground. 12 seconds, that's all it took to change the world forever. But the laughter that followed lasted much longer. Them Wright boys done lost their minds, one observer chuckled to another. If God wanted man to fly, he'd have given us wings. The crowd dispersed, shaking their heads at what they called a foolish waste of time and money. They went home to their regular lives, completely unaware that they had just witnessed the birth of aviation. Less than 6 years later, those same people who laughed were paying to see flying demonstrations. The Wright brothers weren't just flying anymore. They were training pilots and selling aircraft to governments around the world. The mockers had become the customers. The laughers had become the believers. But by then, it was too late to be part of the original vision. This is the story of every great breakthrough in human history. Every innovation that changed the world was first met with laughter, then opposition, then acceptance, and finally universal praise. But here's what most people don't understand. The laughter isn't random, it's predictable. It's the natural response of minds that are imprisoned by current reality to minds that are liberated by future possibility. You see, when Orville and Wilbur Wright looked at the sky, they didn't see empty space. They saw highways. They didn't see birds as creatures different from humans. They saw birds as teachers, showing them the principles of flight that could be applied to machines. While others saw impossibility, they saw opportunity. While others saw fantasy, they saw the future. The human mind has a fascinating defense mechanism. When confronted with an idea that challenges what we believe is possible, we don't examine the idea first. We reject it first, we laugh at it first, we mock it first. Why? Because accepting a new possibility means admitting that our current understanding is incomplete, and most people would rather be comfortable in their limitations than challenged by new possibilities. But here's the truth that separates the Wrights from the crowd. Vision always sees beyond current reality. Vision doesn't ask what is. Vision asks what could be. Vision doesn't measure dreams by present circumstances. Vision measures present circumstances by future dream. I remember when I first started talking about the potential that lay dormant in every human being. People would laugh. They say, Myles, you're talking about ordinary people like they're extraordinary. They were right, I was, because I had learned a secret that they hadn't yet discovered. There are no ordinary people. There are only people who have accepted ordinary thinking. The Wright brothers weren't extraordinary because they were born different. They were extraordinary because they thought different. They refused to accept the limitation that said humans couldn't fly. They refused to bow to the consensus that said they were wasting their time. They refused to let the laughter of others silence the voice of possibility within them. But here's what I find most interesting about the Wright brothers' story. The same people who laughed at them in 1903 were the same people who wished they had invested in their company in 1909. The same people who called them foolish were the same people who called them geniuses 6 years later. The same people who said it was impossible were the same people who said it was inevitable. Nothing had changed about the Wright brothers. They were still the same two men with the same vision. What changed was the world's perception of their vision. And that's the point I want you to understand today. The vision doesn't change. The vision is always right. What changes is the world's readiness to accept the vision. Every person who has ever done something significant with their life has faced this moment. The moment when their vision meets the world's limited understanding. The moment when their possibility meets society's impossibility. The moment when their faith meets the crowd's fear. And in that moment you have a choice. You can either let the laughter convince you that your vision is wrong, or you can let your vision convince you that the laughter is temporary. The Wright brothers chose vision over validation. They chose possibility over popularity. They chose their future over their critics' present. And because they didn't just change their own lives. They changed the world. Right now, as you listen to these words, you have a vision inside you that others don't understand. You have an idea that others haven't grasped. You have a dream that others can't see. And if you're like most people, you probably heard some laughter. You probably heard some doubt. You probably heard some people say it can't be done. But remember this. The Wright brothers' 12-Mach flight on December 17th, 1903 became the foundation for every commercial airline, every military aircraft, and every space mission that followed. 12 seconds of courage changed the next century of human history. Your moment of courage today could change the next century of your life. The question isn't whether people will laugh at your vision. They will. The question is whether you will let their laughter last longer than your 12 seconds of flight. The laughter doesn't stop at vision. It gets louder when that vision starts small. And every great vision starts small. Every single one. Let me tell you about a 62-year-old man who lived off his Social Security check of $105 a month. His name was Harlan Sanders. And he had a recipe, not just any recipe, but what he believed was the world's best fried chicken recipe. He had tried dozens of businesses in his lifetime. He had failed at most of them. But he had this recipe, and he believed in it with everything he had. Sanders took his recipe and started driving from restaurant to restaurant, trying to convince owners to use his chicken recipe. He would cook the chicken right there in their kitchen, asking them to taste it and consider partnering with him. The deal was simple. If they liked it and started selling it, he would get a small percentage of each chicken dinner sold. The first restaurant said no. The second restaurant said no. The 10th restaurant said no. People didn't just reject his recipe, they rejected him. Old man, they would say, go home and enjoy your retirement. Nobody wants to hear about your chicken recipe. Some laughed at his white suit and string tie. Others laughed at his age. Many laughed at his persistence. But Sanders had learned something that most people never learn. A seed doesn't ask the soil's permission to grow. It just grows. And every rejection was just another piece of soil that wasn't ready for his seed, so he kept planting. Restaurant number 100 said no. Restaurant number 300 said no. Restaurant number 500 said no. Can you feel the weight of that? 500 times this man heard laughter. 500 times he heard rejection. 500 times people told him his dream was foolish. Those people would have quit at rejection number 10. Some persistent people might have made it to rejection number 50, but Sanders understood something about seeds that the laughers didn't understand. The power of a seed isn't in how it's received. The power of a seed is in what it carries within itself. After 1,009 rejections, restaurant number 1,010 said yes. Just one yes. That's all it took. That single yes became Kentucky Fried Chicken, which became KFC, which became one of the largest restaurant chains in the world. That 62-year-old man with his Social Security check became a multimillionaire. More importantly, he became proof that seeds don't care about the calendar and dreams don't have expiration dates. But here's what fascinates me about Sanders' story. The same restaurant owners who laughed at him in year 1 were calling him a genius in year 5. The same people who said nobody would want his chicken were buying franchises from him. The same people who told him to go home and retire were asking him how they could become part of his success. What changed? Did Sanders get a better recipe? No. Did he become a better salesperson? Not really. Did he get younger? Definitely not. What changed was that one person said yes. And that yes proved what Sanders knew all along. His seed was good. It just needed the right soil. This is the mathematics of greatness that most people never understand. You don't need everyone to believe in your vision. You don't need the majority to support your dream. You don't need the crowd to stop laughing. You need one yes. One person who sees what you see. One opportunity that recognizes what you carry. One moment when your seed finds the right soil. The tragedy is that most people quit at rejection number 9 when their breakthrough is waiting at rejection number 10. They give up at no number 99 when their yes is hiding behind no number 100. They surrender their seed to the laughter instead of planting it in spite of the laughter. I started with nothing but a vision that every human being carried unlimited potential. People laughed. They said, I was too young to understand life's limitations. They said, I came from a small island that nobody had heard of. They said, my ideas were too big for a man with such a small beginning. But I had learned from Sanders that small beginnings don't determine final endings. Seeds determine harvests. Every giant oak was once an acorn that held its ground. Every great company was once an idea that refused to die. Every world changer was once a dreamer who wouldn't stop dreaming. The laughter doesn't kill the seed. Only surrender kills the seed. Your seed is still good. It doesn't matter how many times you've heard no. It doesn't matter how long people have been laughing. It doesn't matter how small your beginning looks. Seeds don't need applause to grow. They just need persistence. But persistence alone isn't enough. You also need to understand timing. Every seed has a season, and every vision has what I call a gestation period. Let me tell you about a young woman named Rachel who worked as a nurse in a busy hospital. Every day, she watched patients struggle with medication errors, wrong doses, missed pills, dangerous combinations. She saw the fear in their eyes and the frustration of overworked staff. While others accepted this as just part of healthcare, Rachel saw an opportunity. She had an idea for a smart medication dispenser that would prevent these errors. A device that would scan patient IDs, verify medications, and alert everyone involved if something wasn't right. She was excited. She was passionate. She was convinced she could save lives and transform healthcare. Rachel spent her savings developing a prototype. She took it to hospitals, clinics, and healthcare conferences. The response was always the same: laughter followed by polite dismissal. Nurses have been handling medications for decades just fine, they said. Hospitals won't pay for expensive gadgets, they told her. You're trying to fix something that isn't broken, they insisted. For 3 years, Rachel heard nothing but no. Her prototype sat on her kitchen table, a constant reminder of what felt like failure. Her family started suggesting she forget about the device and focus on her nursing career. Friends stopped asking about her invention. The laughter from those early presentations still echoed in her mind. But then something shifted in the world. Patient safety became a national priority. Medication errors started making headlines. Hospitals faced lawsuits and lost licenses. Insurance companies began demanding better safety protocols. The same executives who had laughed at Rachel's device 3 years earlier were now desperately searching for solutions to the very problem she had tried to solve. Rachel's phone started ringing. The same hospitals that had dismissed her were now asking for demonstrations. The same administrators who had called her device unnecessary were now calling it essential. Within 18 months, her company was valued at $50 million. The woman they had laughed at was now the expert they couldn't afford to ignore. What happened? Did Rachel's device suddenly become better? No. Did she become a better businesswoman? Not really. What happened was that the world's readiness finally caught up with her vision's timing. This is the law of gestation that most visionaries don't understand. Your idea might be right, but the world might not be ready. Your solution might be perfect, but the problem might not be painful enough yet. Your vision might be clear, but the market might still be blind. Every great innovation goes through this gestation period. The personal computer waited decades for people to see why they would need one at home. The internet existed for years before businesses understood its commercial potential. Social media was dismissed as a fad until it became the way the world communicates. The tragedy is that most people interpret delay as denial. They think that because their vision isn't accepted immediately, it will never be accepted. They think that because the world isn't ready today, it will never be ready tomorrow. So they abandon their vision during its gestation period, right before the world becomes ready to receive it. But here's what Rachel understood that others missed. Gestation isn't punishment. Gestation is preparation. During those 3 years of rejection, the world was getting ready for her solution. The pain was growing. The need was becoming undeniable. The market was being prepared for her moment. Your vision isn't late, it's in gestation. The laughter you're hearing today is just the sound of a world that hasn't realized how much it needs what you carry. But it will. The most satisfying moment in any visionary's journey isn't when they first succeed. It's when the people who laughed at them suddenly want to be part of what they're building. Let me take you back to January 1997. Apple Computer was dying. The company that had once revolutionized personal computing was now weeks away from bankruptcy. Market share had collapsed. Employees were jumping ship. Industry experts were writing obituaries for what they called a company that had lost its way. Then they brought back Steve Jobs. The same Steve Jobs they had fired 12 years earlier. The same man whose vision had been rejected by his own board of directors. The same leader whose ideas had been called too radical and commercially unrealistic. When the announcement was made, the laughter was immediate. Technology journalists mocked the decision. Competitors celebrated what they saw as Apple's final mistake. Jobs is yesterday's news, they wrote. He's been gone too long, they said. Apple needs conventional leadership, not another dreamer, they insisted. The stock price fell even further. Employees wondered if they should update their resumes. Industry analysts predicted Apple would be sold for parts within 18 months. The laughter wasn't just from outsiders anymore. It was from former colleagues, business partners, and even some Apple employees. But Jobs had something the laughers didn't have. He had never stopped seeing what Apple could become. While they saw a failing computer company, he saw the future of personal technology. While they focused on quarterly losses, he focused on generational opportunities. While they worried about market share, he worried about market creation. Within 2 years, everything changed. The iMac transformed how people thought about computers. iTunes revolutionized how people consumed music. The iPod redefined an entire industry. The iPod didn't just compete with existing phones, it made them obsolete. The iPad created a market that didn't exist before. Suddenly, the same journalists who had mocked Jobs' return were calling him a genius. The same competitors who had celebrated Apple's struggles were trying to copy Apple's innovations. The same analysts who predicted failure were explaining why success was inevitable. The same people who had laughed were now investing. But here's what I find most telling about this transformation. It wasn't gradual. One day they were laughing, and the next day they were praising. One quarter they were predicting failure, and the next quarter they were explaining genius. One moment they were writing obituaries, and the next moment they were writing love letters. What changed so quickly? Jobs was still the same visionary he had always been. His thinking hadn't transformed overnight. His leadership style hadn't suddenly improved. What changed was that his vision finally had the right platform, the right timing, and the right resources to show the world what he had always seen. This is the pattern that repeats throughout history. The mockers don't gradually become believers. They transform instantly the moment vision becomes undeniable reality. They don't slowly change their minds. They suddenly change their stories. They don't apologize for their laughter. They pretend they were never laughing. And here's the part that reveals human nature most clearly. Within months of their transformation, these same people will claim they always knew the vision would succeed. They'll say they believed from the beginning. They'll rewrite history to put themselves on the right side of the story they had originally mocked. The technology executives who dismissed the iPhone were buying iPhones within 6 months. The music industry leaders who said iTunes would never work were licensing their catalogs to Apple within a year. The competitors who laughed at the iPad were scrambling to create tablet computers within 18 months. Your mockers are your future customers. Your critics are your future partners. Your doubters are your future investors. They just don't know it yet. Now comes the moment that separates those who change the world from those who complain about the world. The moment when you must choose how you respond to the laughter. Because your response to mockery today determines your reality tomorrow. Let me share with you the most personal story I've ever told. A story that shaped not just my career, but my entire understanding of what it means to live with vision in a world full of doubters. I was 24 years old, fresh out of university, full of ideas about human potential and leadership that burned inside me like fire. I had a vision that seemed so clear to me, so obvious, so necessary, that every human being carried within them seeds of greatness that had never been planted, gifts that had never been unwrapped, potential that had never been released. I started talking about this vision with everyone who would listen. I spoke about it at churches, community centers, anywhere they would give me a platform. I talked about how people were living below their true capacity, how they had accepted limitations that weren't real, how they could achieve things they had never dreamed possible. The response was swift and brutal. Not just disagreement, but laughter. Deep, mocking laughter that cut through my confidence like a sword. My own family led the chorus of doubt. During a family dinner that I'll never forget, my uncle looked at me across the table and said, "Boy, you're talking about ordinary people like they're extraordinary. You're from a small island. You come from nothing. Who are you to tell people they can be great when you haven't proven your own greatness yet?" The room fell silent. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for my response. Some were smirking. Others looked embarrassed for me. A few seemed to agree with my uncle's assessment. The laughter wasn't loud anymore, but it was there. In their eyes, in their silence, in their judgment. That night, I went home and sat in my small apartment, surrounded by books about leadership and potential and human achievement. For the first time since my vision had crystallized, I questioned everything. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just a young man with big ideas and no experience to back them up. Maybe I should find a regular job, settle down, stop talking about dreams that seem to make people uncomfortable. I almost gave up that night. I almost let their laughter kill my vision. I almost chose their comfort over my calling. But something happened in that moment of near surrender. I realized that their laughter wasn't really about me. It was about them. They weren't laughing at my vision because it was wrong. They were laughing at my vision because it challenged their acceptance of limitation. They weren't mocking my dreams because they were impossible. They were mocking my dreams because they had given up on their own. I made a decision that night that changed everything. Instead of letting their laughter silence my voice, I would let their laughter strengthen my resolve. Instead of proving them right by giving up, I would prove them wrong by pressing forward. Instead of seeking their approval, I would seek my assignment. The next morning, I didn't just continue talking about human potential. I began living it with a new intensity. I didn't just speak about greatness. I pursued it with everything I had. I didn't just teach about vision. I followed mine with unwavering commitment. The laughter continued for months. The doubt persisted for years. But slowly something began to shift. The same ideas that had been mocked in small rooms began to be welcomed in larger venues. The same concepts that had been dismissed by my community began to be embraced by other communities. The same vision that had been laughed at by my family began to be celebrated by strangers. But here's the most powerful part of this story. The transformation wasn't just in how others received my message. The transformation was in how I delivered it. When I stopped seeking approval and started seeking impact, my message became more powerful. When I stopped trying to convince the doubters and started focusing on encouraging the believers, my influence multiplied. When I stopped defending my vision and started demonstrating it, the results spoke louder than any argument ever could. 20 years later, I stood on stages around the world, speaking to hundreds of thousands of people about the same vision that had been laughed at in my uncle's dining room. I wrote books that became bestsellers on the same topics that had been dismissed as unrealistic dreams. I influenced leaders and governments with the same ideas that had once made my own family uncomfortable. And yes, my uncle was in the audience one night when I spoke to 20,000 people in our home country. After the event, he came backstage with tears in his eyes. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I should have believed in your vision when it was just a seed." But here's what I told him then and what I'm telling you now. His laughter didn't stop my vision, it refined it. His doubt didn't destroy my dream, it deepened my determination. His mockery didn't kill my message, it matured my mission. You see, every person who has ever achieved something significant has faced this same choice. When the laughter comes, when the doubt surrounds you, when the mockery tries to silence your vision, you have two options. You can retreat or you can advance. You can surrender to their limited understanding, or you can persist with your unlimited vision. You can let their laughter be the end of your story, or you can let it be the beginning of your legend. The Wright brothers faced this choice at Kitty Hawk. They chose to advance. Sanders faced this choice at rejection number 500. He chose to persist. Rachel faced this choice when her device sat unused on her kitchen table. She chose to wait for the world to catch up. Jobs faced this choice when they said he was finished. He chose to prove them wrong. Now it's your turn. Right now, as you hear these words, you're carrying a vision that others don't understand. You have an idea that others haven't grasped. You possess a dream that others can't see. And if you're honest, you've heard some laughter, you've felt some doubt, you've faced some mockery, but I'm here to tell you that their laughter is not your verdict. Their doubt is not your destiny. Their mockery is not your measurement. You don't need their permission to pursue your vision. You don't need their approval to achieve your dreams. You don't need their understanding to unleash your potential. What you need is the courage to respond to their laughter the same way every world changer has responded, with greater determination, deeper commitment, and unwavering faith in what you carry within you. They're laughing now, but they'll regret later. The question is, will you still be standing when later comes? Your response to their laughter today is writing your legacy for tomorrow. Choose wisely.